Welcome to Betfair's Cricket Trade Talk. I'm Tom Haylock, joined by Darren, Parkin. Well, 2-0 up Australia. Controversy galore. It's all happening over in the UK. Australia giving it back to them a little bit as I welcome Darren Parkin in. Darren, how are you, mate?
Going well, yeah. It's been fascinating. I think that the response has overshadowed the match in many respects. So obviously there was that now controversial stumping, which might not have been controversial at all, but I'm sure we'll have a chat about that through it. There was a reaction of the Lords members in the long room, which was a bit unsavoury. There have been a lot of ex-English cricketers that have sort of said nothing to see here, but then there's been a lot of the pundits, the Piers Morgans of the world, that have said otherwise. So in the end, Australia have won two very competitive test matches, and I think ultimately that's where England should be looking, because they've had chances in both matches, and ultimately we've won both of them.
Are they just doing it to deflect that they're 2-0 down, Darren?
Look, I think had they have gone on and won the test anyway, which Ben Stokes looked like he might have been about to drive them to, obviously they wouldn't have spoken about it quite as much. But obviously there's a few layers to it. And the one question I always ask on the stumping, which I'm sure everybody has seen, is this is the question I think that sums up the whole dead ball thing. If Alex Carey's throw missed the stumps and went past mid-on by chance, would England have run? And the answer to that, I think, is definitely yes. So therefore, the ball is not dead. So no one can tell me that England wouldn't have taken overthrows if there were, in fact, overthrows. So I think that kind of sums it up. And we've got to remember that, obviously, Johnny Bairstow tried to run Marnus Labuschagne out the same way on day 3. So, yeah, a little bit of hypocrisy there, rightly or wrongly.
A little bit. A lot of hypocrisy in everything they're doing. I understand the nuances and slight differences in end of the over compared to other things that we've seen on social media and other examples, but it's full of hypocrisy. No doubt England would have done the same. We don't need to talk about that anymore, but I'm just going to ask you a couple of back or lay questions, Darren, to kick off, as we did last week. Can you, it seems like a month ago, if not 6 months ago, that Bairstow picked up a protester and a pitch invader and took him off the ground. How has that not been the talking point to come from a test match? Are you backing or laying what Bairstow did there?
I actually love that. I know Bairstow ended up in the news for other things, but I like that no-nonsense approach, particularly when there was a real significant chance that the protesters were trying to damage the pitch. It's not just a case that there's an invader on the ground who's being annoying. They could have jeopardised the test match actually being played if they were, I don't know what they were going to put on it, like soil or sand or whatever they were going to do with it. I mean, hopefully it wasn't something like oil or paint. But, I think they had every right to try to protect the integrity of the game and take a no-nonsense approach to, obviously it's not advisable when you've got pitch invaders because you don't know what they can do. And it reminds me of Terry Alderman, blowing his shoulder apart, tackling a spectator in Perth. It's not a great idea. But I'm certainly happy that he got his comeuppance, that's for sure.
That was so good. It was his best take for the summer. No doubt about that. The first one is grabbed cleanly. It's an interesting one. We all know you don't need to protest the oil, Darren. It's linseed oil that goes on your cricket bats. That's all you need to know. Are you backing or laying the decision of Stark's catch?
Look, again, on one hand, if we're going to talk about letter of the law with the stumping, like technically to the letter of the law, Stark's catch was grounded, but they never get called not out, really. I mean, not England's fault, not Australia's fault necessarily. The umpires have made a decision, but that's a clean catch. And I kind of treat it like a mark in football, where if the ball stops moving, I think you classify that as a mark. And I think it's same in cricket. If the ball literally stops moving, it's not spinning, it's not bobbling, it's stopped in your hands, then that's a catch. And he's basically put his hand down to brace his fall, having already completed the catch. So I think most people who have watched cricket would expect that to be out. So I'm laying that decision.
Interesting take there, Darren. I am probably backing the decision in terms of the letter of the law. It is technically not out, but the rule needs to change. It's long gone, as you make a great point regarding AFL and what's a mark in AFL, Darren. But we've seen so many examples. Ricky Ponting, again, made some salient points. Every second slips catch in history would be given not out if they had to control their body. I saw an example of Pat Cummins taking a a catch off his own bowling, and what he did there, he caught it, and he hadn't even stopped rolling before he threw the ball up in the air. It was given out. There's no difference, and I think the rule needs to change, and I think the rules will change after this test on a number of things. Bairstow's run out stumping. You're backing or laying Carey for doing it, first of all?
I'm backing him only because he actually released the ball immediately, and at that time Bairstow was still in his crease. And I'm laying the commentary from some suggesting that, because Johnny Bairstow sort of marked the ground for a second and then walked off, that he declared it a dead ball. I'm like, since when does a batsman declare a ball dead? It's an umpire that declares a ball dead. I don't get that, how all of a sudden that's his decision to make. So, look, one thing I will say, though, is that if it happened the other way, I think there'd be certain sections of the Australian media that would be getting stuck into the POM. So I guess we can look at it and say there might be some hypocrisy on our side of the fence. But the reality of the situation is England have done that before. England won a World Cup on a deflection that went for 4. They didn't call that back. As I said, England would have taken overthrows if it missed the stumps. So I think we've all just got to settle down and understand it's the game. And one thing, I'm keen in a moment we'll get John Emburey's thoughts, who we caught up with during the week, but Stuart Broad made a comment, and I'll ask if you're backing or laying this. I'll put it in context. Stuart Broad said it's the worst thing he's ever seen on a cricket ground. Stuart Broad played a test match against Pakistan in 2010 where 3 Pakistan players were arrested for conspiracy to fix a match, and 2 of them went to jail. Yet this was the worst thing he's ever seen on a cricket ground. So, I'm laying that from Stuart Broad.
What did he say to Carey? This is what you'll be remembered for forever. Get your hand off it. That is the height of hypocrisy. He's edged one to that first slip, not walked. He is the one person that can't talk about the spirit of cricket. It is absolutely ridiculous. I'm laying Stuart Broad for that. It's going to be amazing as we head towards the third test, Darren, but the scenes, obviously, it's Bairstow's home ground as well. Thursday night, it's going to be on. I can't wait.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. And look, in fairness to Johnny Bairstow, he's kind of caught up in it a little bit. Obviously, a lot of the byplay has been from others. And look, he's had a bit to say, but clearly he's always obviously going to be a little bit annoyed by it, but he's probably not necessarily the perp, but the crowd will get behind him, no doubt. And John Emburey, one of the more experienced English players, has captained England in the past, played 64 tests. We got him on just to get the thoughts of an ex-player, and this is what he had to say in regards to that stumping.
The ball is live still. I didn't actually see the incident from what I've heard and read. Carey released the ball straight away. But when the ball went through, I think Johnny Bairstow marked his guard. So he wasn't going anywhere. And then he marked his guard and then walked out the crease and probably walked up the wicket to chat with Ben Stokes. But Carey released the ball straight away. There's nothing wrong with that. I think one has to wonder whether that was a premeditated move, because at the end of the over, do umpires always say over? They probably say over, and then off they walk, and nobody else hears it apart from perhaps the bowler. Could the umpires have diffused the situation a little bit and approached Pat Cummings to say, look, it's a tricky one there, spirit of the game and everything else. Do you want to withdraw the appeal? They could have gone down that route, but at the end of the day, Johnny Bairstow was at fault for leaving his crease. It's as simple as that. It's a law or a regulation within the laws, and that's final. It's as simple as that. The umpires have to make a decision in the same way that they made that decision with Mitchell Starc when he took that catch and as he called it and landed on the ground, he grounded the ball. It stipulates that as well. You've got to have control of the ball, but. I was talking about it. I was playing cricket on the Sunday, and the players that were there, and a lot of international players were playing, ex-international players, mind you. But when you take the ball, normally you turn, and if you take the ball there, you normally turn and land on the back of your hand, so the ball is up in the air. You don't sort of catch it and then ground it straight away. Touchy one. He caught it. I thought he called it fair and square. He had control of the ball, which a lot of people would say, well, he had control of the ball. I don't know. It's something that, again, the umpires have to make a call on, and I think they probably, in the spirit of the game, they probably got it wrong as well. But it's a law stipulation, and they went by the letter of the law.
He also weighed in a bit there, Tom, on the Mitch Stark catch, and sort of similar to what we were talking about, to the letter of the law on both fronts, but doesn't mean necessarily that you like both decisions.
No, I'm still amazed he's still playing, Darren.
Yeah, I know. He's still rolling it over. He was playing on day 5 of that match. He's 71, John Emburey, and still taking wickets at local level, which is a tremendous effort. He took 2,000 back in the day. I mean, there was so much first-class cricket played in England. He took 2,289 first-class wickets. It's a bit like when you hear about Graham Hick making 100 centuries. They just played so much cricket back in the day.
It's incredible. Obviously, highlights on the cricket pitch, other than the controversy and what happened. Smith dominated again, man of the match performance. He's now set to play his 100th test, Darren. He averages just shy of 60 in test match cricket. Unbelievable record. Where does he sit in terms of the all-time players in your mind?
Yeah, he's right up there. I think we always classify, I mean, if Bradman's out on his own on an island there, but then you look at, I think everybody have considered that Australia's second best batsman since Bradman would be out of the likes of Greg Chappell, Ricky Ponting, Steve or Alan Border. But Steve Smith's in that group of 5, you would think now. He's probably got a couple of them covered. I've had Ponting in terms of what I've seen in modern times, but Smith's record's probably going to eclipse even him. I think Ponting scored 13,000 runs at 55 or thereabouts. Where do you have him? I think all things considered, he may well retire our second best batsman.
Yeah, I find it funny when you compare stats and data and whatnot. You think Steve Smith will surpass Ricky Ponting. We saw Ricky Ponting, his average dropped towards the end of his career. So interesting if Steve can do that. He relies heavily on hand-eye coordination rather than technique, and he's bottom-handed, which is really interesting in terms of his technique, the way he slashes through mid-wicket and covered using that bottom hand. Whether that's sustainable when he gets older and like Ricky Ponting, his average comes down. But I will always see Ricky Ponting as the GOAT. Obviously, you've got your Don Bradmans of the past, but in terms of our era, Ricky Ponting's always going to be my favourite cricketer and the best batsman I've seen. But you can't knock what Smith's doing. He just comes out and makes runs for fun. He's actually incredible. You can't work out, like, no one knows where to bowl to him. No one's worked out how to get him out. They've tried leg side stuff before. It's fascinating. Speaking of leg side stuff, tactics, both teams, short rubbish. I'm laying that. It seems Bazball only applies to batting innings, Darren, because they were very positive with the ball. They've prepared dull, docile wickets that have been very slow. They've got bowlers that can't bowl quick, and yet they're producing pitches that take their best asset in terms of movement off the pitch and through the air, and Jimmy Anderson and Broad out of the match with these docile pitches. Surely that's going to change heading towards the last three test matches, Darren.
Yeah, quite possibly so. I'll slide in here with John Emburey's thoughts on that as well. He's been as bold to say, and it's probably not that far-fetched, to suggest that if the pitches and the way England are playing could very well end the career of Jimmy Anderson.
It's a different perspective, isn't it, from your batsmen attacking the Australian bowlers. What do your bowlers do? Your bowlers are looking to get the ball in good areas to bowl the opposition out. How can you over-attack unless you've got slips there in place? And it's a different thing for a captain to work out. If you had a very fast-paced attack, then yes, I can understand going and getting stuck into them. But when you've got an attack with the pace that England have got, and Ben Stokes is a fifth seamer, there's no pace there. So we've got to rely on movement off the pitch rather than pace and bounce. Stokes has called for flat wickets. Well, that doesn't help Anderson at all. You might as well, it's bringing an end to Anderson's career. Anderson is effective in conditions where the ball is moving around, mostly through the air, not necessarily off the seam. But Broad is always going to be a handful. He's done very, very well for someone that has been left out of the odd series here and there, West Indies, which I can understand. But in England, he's got to play because he, especially against Australia, Warner in particular, He's bowled well in these 2 Test matches, but Jimmy has been ineffective. And you have to question whether he will be in the frame for the next Test match.
Certainly a possibility. Jimmy Anderson, on the wrong side of 40 now, and he's even suggested he might not play other parts of the series. So that will be fascinating. And yeah, I mean, from an England point of view as well, their tactics against the short bowling ultimately cost them the match. I mean, Australia were down Nathan Lyon with England 1 for 188 in the first innings, looking really comfortable with Pope and Duckett at the time. They then lost 3 for 15 in about 6 overs, and that really cost them the game. And then obviously Harry Brooks' dismissal on day 3 started a chain reaction. And yeah, it was really interesting, the leg side short bowling of Australia with 3 or 4 out in the deep, and England fell for it, and they don't have the pace to then bowl the same way to Australia, even though Australia were falling for the trap a little bit as well. So I'm keen to see how Australia approach it now that they'll have a spinner again, obviously with Todd Murphy likely to play. But yeah, Nathan Lyon out of the series is a big blow. He's clearly the superior spinner out there, and we'll miss him for sure.
Yes. Can I just put Australia's batting in the lay bin? As well. It was incredibly dumb cricket. We saw Cameron Green succumb to a short ball, get caught on the boundary after blocking and defending for an hour, and then he goes and throws his wicket away. The batsman in the second innings, Duckett, prime example, he hit pull shots on the ground. Whatever happened to us hitting the ball on the ground, Darren? Why do we need you can play a pull shot, you can play him in front of square. You don't have to hit him up in the air. Just roll your wrists on it, bring the bat from high to low, hit it along the ground. You do that 4 times and over, they're going to stop bowling it pretty quickly.
Yeah, if you're getting 4 singles and over, you've satisfied Bazball's requirements anyway. Like at 4 or 5 and over, just nudge it around in ones. It doesn't have to be boundaries. And you mentioned Ricky Ponting before. He was the master at rolling the wrists on pull shots and keeping them down, and scoring runs so freely through that area. And yeah, it is a fascinating one, sort of looking at that overall as to whether that does in fact change, and whether they pull their heads in and just tighten it up a little bit heading into Headingley.
Well, let's get to Headingley. The match odds: Australia $2.36 favourites, England $2.70. The draw amazingly still short, $4.70. I'm against the draw again, Darren. There does look some rain around. I heard Stuart Broad come out in his he pens an article every week, I believe, and I read that in the article he said that they need results now, so the pitches are going to be made for results. Obviously, they can't have draws from here on in because Australia hold the Ashes. So if it's a draw, we win the Ashes or retain the Ashes. They need results. They need to win. Are they going to be more positive again? I just think the pitches are going to be greener and produce a bit more than we've seen in the first 2, and I'm happy to be against the draw at $4.70. I'm laying it. No reason why I could entertain backing a draw at $4.70, Darren.
Yeah, England almost play 4-day cricket in many respects. I found it interesting that Australia's odds are slightly longer than they were going into the second test. I know Australia's record at Lords was great, but you probably put that down to maybe Nathan Lyon, with Australia going from, say, 225 to 236. That might be a factor in some of that. England slightly shorter. Heading towards this. Obviously, Wimbledon is going on at the same time, and they've lost 2 days almost completely to rain. So you sense there's a bit of weather around. If that does settle down, then they could lose 100 overs and still get a result in a test match here for mine. And
even that, the rain around means they may have had less time to prepare the pitch. Obviously, covers on. So it is going to do more. I think it's going to seem more and move around a little bit more. I think that's the natural go-to from England. But you make a great point. I'm happy to be with Australia, lay the draw. And again, what I did last test in our last trade talk, Darren, was have more weighted money on Australia, lay the draw again. Result if England win, I'm going to be doing the exact same. I'm shocked Australia are longer odds than they were last test. They lost the toss. England bowled with the better conditions. Every time they bowled, it seemed the clouds came over and they were able to do more with the pitch. Australia, every time they picked up the ball, the clouds disappeared. Just think everything went in England's favour last test, and they still couldn't beat us or Australia. So I'm happy to be with Australia again at that price and lay the draw. Are you seeing it similar?
Yeah, I am, and it sort of brings me to another back or lay out of that. Watching England's run chase on the last day when Ben Stokes was, smashing us everywhere and got England right into the contest. In fact, they got into about, I think they were $9 when Bairstow went out, and then $1.60 when they were 6 for 300. So they became favourite. But when England was 6 down, I found it interesting that it almost felt like Stokes had to do it all himself, and that he wasn't taking singles until the 5th ball of the over. And I was thinking, watching that, as much as they were creeping closer, I'm like, well, he's got to make a double century for them to win, because he's the only one who can score, because he's taking the strike. I was like, you're 6 down, Broad's got a test 100, you're about 80 runs away. You should probably take the singles, I reckon, when they're on offer. I thought that by the time Stokes went out and they were 70 away, they could have been 40 away potentially, which just changes the mindset of the tail. So, I mean, he batted superbly, so it's hard to be critical, but I just found it strange that they weren't taking all runs on offer, chasing 370 at that stage of the game. But that's a bit of a segue.
It's really interesting. Yeah, Broad had to make, not Broad, Stokes had to make 200 for them to win. It was an outstanding innings, and there were shades of Headingley in 2019, and I was sitting on the couch, very stressed, Darren. I don't know, I was walking around the living room. I was nerves, but what a test match it was. Let's get to some series prices. We've talked about the match at Headingley and the prices there, and I think we're both against the draw at $4.70 at the moment. We're leaning to Australia, but top Aussie run scorer, I was against Khawaja last ahead of the second test, and I've backed Smith. So I've laid Khawaja a little bit, back Smith. I can actually cash out for a profit at the moment. But he's $1.76 Khawaja. He batted superbly again. I don't think the pitches from here on in, I said this prior to last test and I was probably mistaken, but I think the green surfaces and a bit more tinge, it'll be doing a bit more, it'll be harder for the openers. So I'm again, rather be in Smith's corner at $3.90. You have any opinion on the top Australian run scorer?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I mean, everyone else is in double figures, so it appears to be the 2-horse race between those two. But yeah, Khawaja $1.76, batting really well, 70 odd in the second innings again. But Smith looks to have found his rhythm, 100th test, so you'd think that he'll want to channel himself in. I could see him cashing in here and being almost favourite at the end of this test match. With the 100 that he made in that first inning. So I really like him at the 390. And Khawaja, it's tough sometimes for openers to sustain it the whole way through a series in England. So I think it was Mark Taylor in 89 was the last Aussie to lead a series for runs as an opener in England. So I think Smith, as it goes on, is going to work his way. And that's about as long at odds as he'll be for the rest of the series, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with Smith. Laying Khawaja still. I wouldn't be. We're not halfway through the series yet, and I wouldn't dismiss a couple of others. Like Labuschagne can still score 100 here and there and get his way back into this contest. So so I'm more against Khawaja there at that $1.76. I'm able to lay him there. The bowlers as well, Darren. I was fortunate. Laid Nathan Lyon for most wickets for the series. I've heavily invested into Pat Cummins, and we haven't talked about the teams, but Pat Cummins will play. We know that. So in terms of the bowlers, do they bring in a bowl and back in? Does Hazelwood rest now? I thought Stark did enough. He added a bit of difference. He was the one bowler that actually moved it in the air, and his wicket to get Crawley was sensational. So that clean bowled, was that Pope or Crawley? I can't remember now.
I think it was Crawley. Yeah, I think you're right.
Outstanding, and I think he just adds that variety, left armour, a bit of pace. If they do produce those dead wickets, he brings him into the game. But in terms of wicket takers, I got fortunate with laying Lyon. Are you still with Cummins?
I think so. He's the only one who's probably going to play all 5. Obviously, Stark's missed a test, Boland's missed a test, Lyon's out of the series. I doubt Hazelwood plays every match. I think that Boland will come in for him. And then he might come back, Hazelwood, a little bit later on in the series. So Cummins is going to be there for all of them. I think even in overall series wickets, he's about 370, 380 at the moment. Favourite ahead of the likes of Stuart Broad, who, in fairness to him, has actually bowled quite well throughout this series. Just on the Australian squads, a little segue, we might just get, because Todd Murphy is the one who'll have the pressure on him now, played very well in India. On debut, has played very well for Victoria at Shield level, and he'll now get the chance to play, you would think, 3 Ashes test matches in a row. And John Emburey was a spinner for nearly 20 years at international level, and he weighed up how Todd Murphy might perform in England.
Nathan Lyon is best spin bowler in the world, current spin bowler in the world, without a doubt. Match-winning bowler, vital to Australia's success that they've had over the last half dozen years or so. Look, Todd's a good bowler. He bowls a different pace, different trajectory than Nathan Lyon. The pitches won't be as helpful as they were in India in terms of spin. So it'll be more of a challenge. Pitches are slower, be a little bit lower. You won't get that sharp turn and bounce. Actually, to be honest with you don't know what you get in England anymore. Headingley used to seam around. Doesn't seam around as much. They changed the wicket, which for us was a bloody nightmare. But Tom Murphy's a good bowler, but he needs to play and be exposed in all types of conditions to develop his game. He looks as though he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's got a few wickets, so no doubt he'll be comfortable. All Australians are very confident anyway, and I'm sure he'll look forward, if he gets the opportunity of bowling at Headingley, really enjoy it and get stuck in.
John Emburey on Todd Murphy. Any other markets you wanted to look at? The overall run scorer, I think, Tom, as well, with Khawaja, Root and Smith dominating that market.
Yeah, and then we've got England too. Obviously, Root had a sensational Test 1. Duckett was fantastic in Test 2. He batted really well. He got found out in the first Test, Darren. He doesn't leave a lot of balls, and they played. They bowled a wide line outside his off stump, and he dabbled and nicked a couple. That's how they'll try and get him out in future. And obviously that short ball as well. I'd be more inclined to be with Root again and stay with that $2.20. I think he's their linchpin, he's their anchor in the innings, and they'll just bat around him and play a bit of baseball and force a result that way. I do think Duckett's still susceptible to that outside off line. He might nick up a couple of times, especially if we get on those green pitches again and they try and get more results. So I'm with Root again heavily at the $2.20 there, Darren.
Yeah, and even in the series, he's gone from 250 out to 490 overall, with Khawaja having another pretty good Test match. So I still think there's a bit of value in that. I think he'll make another ton somewhere in the series. So again, in overall, you got Khawaja 250, Root 490, Smith 550. I like Root 490 and Smith 550. That's a good way to play in that. And yeah, Joe Root's the reliable option, even if he did fall into the baseball trap in that second Test and get caught in the deep a couple of times when he really didn't need to be playing those shots. So, I still think he's the one who's more likely to rein it in. I'm not sure the others know how.
Yes. Do you want to talk about England's squad as well? We've got Moeen Ali potentially back. His blister might have healed and they might have cut his finger off. Do they play Wood with a bit of variety and a bit of speed? If they're going to go down that short ball pitch, you'd be worried if you're Travis Head facing Wood. What do you reckon of the English squad?
Yeah, I think they need a point of difference with pace. Obviously, Robinson, Broad, Anderson. They also played Tongue, who bowled okay through that second Test, but no one with a bit of pace. Wood can get more bounce, can get more speed, and I think they really need that. But at the same time, Moeen Ali strengthens their batting a little bit if he comes in at 8. He's got Test hundreds, and obviously they need a spinner, given that Stokes can be a fourth seamer if they need him to be, albeit he's not bowling that much given the injuries. So I would think that Ali and Wood play, but for who? I mean, if Wood plays, it's probably for Anderson. And then, as I said, Tongue actually bowled okay in the second Test. So does Moeen Ali play for him? So yeah, I think they've got to make a change, simply because they're bowling so many more overs than we are, because obviously we're not batting as aggressively. I think they've bowled 120 more overs or something like that in the series. So I just think they're going to have to rotate the way we are if they're going to be able to sustain it.
That was brilliant tactics by Khawaja, and he said that post the first Test as well. They're trying to keep him in the field, take the game deep, and keep the bowlers, the 40-year-olds, Anderson and Broad, and their older bowlers in the field for longer. And he played it perfectly. We got the results. So very interesting. Darren, take the new ball. Your best bet for the third Test, mate.
I like Smith representing more value here. Obviously, his slow start in the first Test meant that there was value in the second, but Khawaja obviously making runs in the second Test as well probably kept that value about where it is. So, I'm going with Steve Smith again. Most runs Australia this Test, most runs Australia in the series as well. So, especially in his 100th, he's the type of player that I think will, relish the milestone. And he spoke about this as being Everest, obviously trying to win an Ashes series in England. Obviously, he's not captain this time, but still a leader within the group. And yeah, I just get the feeling he'll dig in here and he'll be favourite by the end of this Test. How do you see it?
Well, I just want to ask you, will Australia win the series at Headingley?
Yes. I
There
think
you go.
so.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, they're favourites to do so at the $2.34. I'm with Australia. I'll be laying the draw, backing Australia. So having England for a profit and Australia for hopefully twice as much profit, lay the draw. That's how I'll be playing the third test. In terms of results, so I'm heavily invested Joe Root, most series runs for England. I think the 220 still represents value there. I'm laying Kawaja, backing Smith on the same boat as you. They're my three plays. Continue to do so. I've got Cummins going for a nice result as well. They're foremost wickets for Australia. So did you want to just get to John's thoughts as well, Darren?
Yeah, I'm just going to slip in a couple of grabs from him. One on England's need to adapt to the circumstances, the way that Usman Khawaja did. You referenced Khawaja's tactics, and John Emburey weighed in a little bit on that as well.
And you can fault it and you praise it. We've all said, it's attractive cricket. It's great to watch, but you have to be able to adapt in a cricket match as well. Khawaja has batted brilliantly in the two matches. He's got runs all the time. He's got 100s, he's got a couple of 70s. And he looks top class. We're playing 4-day cricket and Australia are playing 5-day cricket. I think Test cricket has got to reinvent itself, yeah. But I think Brendan McCullum wants to do that with the English game. And saying, right, okay, we've got to play county cricket in the same way to produce players for Test match cricket, to take it forward. Test match cricket may come down to 4-day cricket, and the way England play is perfect. We'll end up getting a lot more. We might end up getting a lot more draws playing 4-day cricket. Why not play 5-day cricket as they're playing at the moment? It's still a damn good game, as we've seen in these two Test matches. And why change something that's been going on for over 100 years? An Ashes series, which has always got drama, intrigue. There's always something that's going to happen. Yeah, one side might get outplayed in a series because they're not as strong as the opposition. And this is all this theory is coming from someone that's never been involved in an Ashes series.
And the other one, that was John Emburey there on the tactics. And the final thought I wanted to get from him was Brendan McCullum made the somewhat childish comment that not sure we'll have a beer after the game, but John Emburey feels that that's just a bit of hot air, and the relationship between the sides is far better than reported. And it does appear that way on field. I mean, Stuart Broad will occasionally wink at Dave Warner. Dave Warner will, pat him on the back on the way past if he's bowled a good ball. I think it's better than it seems, and John Emburey shares that view.
Also have a beer at the end of it. You see them when Broad goes past Warner's bat. Warner sort of nods and got a smile on his face, walks down the pitch, and Broad has got that sort of looks down the pitch at him like that and has a little smile. I think IPL has changed a lot in terms of players' reactions on the cricket field. IPL has brought a lot of international players together, playing together in a competition that has developed Indian cricketers, and in that respect, it's still the toughest cricket to play. It's played hard, and you're not going to give any quarter. But also that there are mates there. You have an Australian guy playing an IPL team. You've got a South African, you've got a New Zealander, and you've got an Englishman in the same team as well. So, and I've no doubt that the international players stick together and have a drink in the evening. There's no doubt about that. So there's always a bit of a chat, and then go away and you play a Test series together. You'll be at each other, but there'll be a lot of Mickey taking as well, and you'll get the odd sledge. That's not going to change. It's still healthy for cricket, and it's Test match cricket is played hard. It's a tough game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with John there. I think the way that the manner of the cricket on field, I know Robinson got a bit carried away with Khawaja in the first test, and there was a bit of words, and Broad was pretty heated in that final innings there. But I generally think there's a sense of respect, especially from Stokes both ways.
Yeah.
I think the Australians really respect Stokes. They patted him on the back for his innings in the final innings as well. Which was great to see, given what had occurred previously. I think there is a level of respect there, Darren.
Yeah, and look, we've got to remember it's competitive sport. I mean, you can be pretty chummy off the field and have a beer and have a meal or whatever it may be. But obviously, when you're competing, there'll be things said. But as long as you don't cross the line, but it's going to be competitive. I think we've got to expect that. You're not going to walk out there and give everyone a hug when they're in the middle. I think it's a case of I'm trying to win the game, you're trying to win the game. But at the end of it, we'll respect the fact that it's a contest. So, yeah, I don't think there's huge vitriol and angst between the two sides. I think that, even Stuart Broad, I get the feeling that a few of the Australians probably don't mind him as a bloke, to be honest, because he is competitive and he fights the fight. And I think he stirs the pot to stir the pot. And I think we know that. Dave Warner's always had that reputation a bit in the past as well. So, yeah, I think it's very, very competitive, and some of the childish stuff has probably been more done by the English pundits than anything else.
Definitely. Broad thrives on it. That's how
Yeah.
Broad's going to get through the next 3 matches bowling, get the crowd involved, thrive on a bit of that. He does it very well. But Khawaja came out after the second test and straight after, immediately talked about the MCC and what happened up in the long room. And then he said that Broad's one of his favourite cricketers and how much respect he had. So it was great to hear.
Yeah, I was going to say, look at Virat Kohli, for example, where I think publicly a lot of Australian fans will say, oh, Kohli's a pain in the ass or whatever it may be. But I reckon if you ask most people privately, they probably like him to a degree. They're like, he's a combative, almost plays like the way we'd like to play. And it appears that the Australians actually don't mind him too much. So,
the players you love to hate.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd love them on your side.
Respect. And as long as they walk the walk, and Stuart Broad's a superstar, Ben Stokes is a superstar, Joe Root is a superstar, I think Australian fans can respect that in the opposition.
Yep. Thoroughly agree. I can't wait for Thursday nights. Darren, I'll be getting the popcorn out. I might not sleep for another 5 days. It's going to be a long weekend. Sensational viewing. I'm fascinated by how Headingley's going to react, and the Aussies better brunt up and face a barrage from the crowd, Darren. But thanks for joining me. Been a pleasure. Go well. Come on, Australia. Any final words, mate?
Let's wrap it up inside 3. We haven't won since 2001. We did that in 3 tests. So it'd be nice to seal it now and then party time in the last 2.
We'll drop a test. We don't have a great record in the dead rubbers. So come on, Australia. 3-0 all the way. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back. Darren and I will be back on Betfair's Trade Talk ahead of the 4th test. All the best.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.